Anyways, I'm APT Big Daddy, joined by the Beige Mystique and Elder, and this week it's no guest. We're talking the news. So let's kick right into it. Did you guys see Albania got really mad at Iran?
Didn't, but I like the way you describe it.
Yeah, so basically, Iran, in typical Iranian fashion on cyber, decided that they were going to go ahead and attack the some Albanian companies.
They're pretty
So
weapons free when it comes to cyber attacks. They don't seem to really care. They just kind of squeeze.
yeah, so they actually just kicked Iran out of the country. They're like, we're closing your embassy and you have to leave within 24 hours. So I think this is really the first time we've seen a cyber attack lead to like banishment, which is kind of cool. I feel like this is kind of a cool response. Iran's saying like it's an extreme response and it's dumb that they're doing this, but there is no cyber norms right now, so like there is with wartime. So it's kind of interesting to see how they've tackled it. But do you think the response is warranted? Like,
So yeah, actually, in response to that, I would say yes. That's a valid, viable, reasonable response, right? If you've got uniformed military personnel inside of a country's borders without permission, it's an act of war, right? Legally speaking. If you have aggression against a nation state by a nation state, I would qualify that as we're pushing the limits of legally speaking act of war, and to say, hey, all right, fine, get out. Um, Politically, it's a solid message. Defensively, it doesn't do anything. Kicking out a bunch of embassy workers doesn't change your defensive posture or your attack surface at all, but it does send a message that hey, this isn't going to be, tolerated and just swept under the rug.
yeah, I don't know. This is something that I found kind of just intriguing to dig into, as like even even the relationship between like the U.S. and Russia. We've never actually seen major issues, or U.S. and China, right? Like we still do business with U.S. We still do business with China. We don't necessarily do business with Russia anymore because Ukraine. Um, but like there's a this is a pretty stiff response, and I feel like it wasn't even uh, the attacks themselves weren't foiled by like the Albanian government. It was more so like stemmed from a report that Mandiant had released on um, Iran attacking Iranian dissidents. Like going after its own people and going, all right, well, we're gonna screw with you in other ways. It's no Saudi Arabia attack, right? But
Yeah, but you're still dealing with the infrastructure of a separate sovereign nation, right? Like your target is technically your citizenry. However, you're still operating within the bounds of somebody else's space. And I'm pretty sure in like 2016 we kicked a bunch of Russian diplomats out of the US
oh, sure,
in
and I
response
mean,
to a very similar thing. So like it's not unprecedented um to be like, all right, I know you didn't directly have anything to do with it. You're leaving now.
yeah, but
Nice.
at the same time, like we may have kicked out some diplomats and said, "Hey, you military intelligence folks, don't come over here," right? But like we still have embassies. We still have diplomatic relationships in some form or fashion, right? Especially with like when let's take China for example, when they stole the F-22 plans through like hacking Boeing and whatnot. We still do business with China. We did it for 10 plus years still. So it's been kind of a big flip side there, where we're seeing countries actually take this seriously and go, all right, I don't want to deal with this anymore. Though I don't know, the political tensions between Iran and Albania may be much different than us and China or us and Russia.
That particular pairing is not something that I've paid a lot of attention to in the past. Like, my Iranian exposure has been more US focused than it has Albanian focused. That interaction, I've never really tracked it. So it's interesting to see that it's escalated to that point if it hadn't already been pretty tense.
Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of cool. You got any thoughts on it there, Beige?
Man, I'm just listening. Letting the guys who've actually seen war and know far more diplomacy than I do. I'm just gonna let you guys talk about this one
I don't know
because
about diplomacy, bro. Like, we're pretty shit at that. I see you let your hair grow out, though. That's pretty sweet.
your form of diplomacy is just pew pew.
Pew, pew, pew. Shoot
Yeah,
now,
it
ask
was call the
questions later.
boys or get the hellfires going.
Right.
Yeah, man, I grew out my hair a little bit. Just let it. I think from last week I decided that I want to have a full head of hair, so I went out and I grew my full head of hair because you can do anything if you dream big enough.
Yeah, if we've learned anything from Grand Theft Auto, all you have to do is go to a barber shop and you can grow an afro in a couple seconds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then what else? I got my gotta
150
rock my
bucks.
top hat.
Oh, here we go. I like how it's blurred. It's like, oh yeah, here's
Like
me face, but the top hat inappropriate, completely inappropriate. I don't know how it doesn't pick that up. No, I guess moving on from geopolitical issues in the world of cyber. What's been on everybody's mind as of lately is Patreon firing their entire staff. Now, if you've ever been curious on how big cybersecurity teams are in the world, the answer is 5. Um, Patreon is all of 5 people, and they got fired, let go, whatever that may be.
Seriously?
Huh? Yeah, it's just
Downsized. Yeah, they
downsized.
remained 5.
Five?
Everybody else got the can.
That's insane.
It's batshit, man.
Yeah. So I think what's curious here is the bet that they're taking, right? I want to mostly focus there,
I mean,
because
sorry.
yeah, no. All I was gonna say is like these dudes are outsourcing now their security, right? And we've seen as pen testers or adversarial emulators, emulate criminals, whatever you want to call us, right? Um, we've seen SLAs from third-party cybersecurity firms completely blown out, right? Like with big names where they're like, "Hey, we'll respond within an hour," and then 3 days later they go, "Oh, hey, by the way, we saw an issue that we saw your domain controller maybe got hacked like 3 days ago." Like, yeah, we've had domain admin for a minute, so like there's a bet that Patreon's taking, and I don't know if they're ready for it.
It's a bad bet. I mean, can you imagine not just that they only have a few people now, but the fact that that is so public, the target that they just put on their back, outsourcing all this to MSSPs that I mean, you guys know what it's like to talk with some of these MSSPs. There's some solid ones out there, but there's a lot that are not solid. To your point, there are a lot there are a lot that might not notify you of an issue until they find out weeks later, months later. So you're one of many clients for them.
Yeah,
You're not the priority for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, your own
exactly.
internal teams, you're always going to be the priority.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm just
yeah.
I don't know. I hear that and I'm like, well, challenge accepted.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. And that's my biggest fear with those guys is that it was such a big public thing, at least for people that are kind of in the sphere, in the know of it. It was such a big public event that hey, Patreon just canned whatever percent and only have 5 people remaining. That's pretty common knowledge at this point. And that just screams target to me. Like I
yeah.
have to put my criminal hat away for a little while.
Yep.
For as
Because
big as they
man, that
are.
just screams target for me. Like, yeah, we'll just office space it, dude. We'll just skim 5 cents off of every transaction that Patreon does. Like, yeah, it will give my
You know,
own deepler.
I feel like you're saying essentially our 5 people are better than the rest of the rest of the world at what they
Yeah.
do. You know, what a bold claim. God bless you if you're one of those 5 listening to this. Where's my hat?
If you're, yeah.
Hats off to you, because
Ooh, nice. Well played.
yeah,
No,
you're in
I
for some
do think
times.
that this is something that is going to be really looked at heavily um, over the course of this year and going into into the future. As like, if it pays off, what's going to happen to some of these other cybersecurity teams? For companies like Patreon's a big name, right? They're not really a big company, but they're a big name. Um, if some of these big name small companies see that it paid off for Patreon, do they take that same risk? And if they take the same risk, like, is it going to be reciprocated across those as well? Right? Similar to the whole idea of our talk last time around, there's 50,000 people at DEF CON. Like, what is the chances you being the one out of 50,000 that gets attacked, right? Personally. Um, but they are in the limelight, whereas, like, we're not really walking around DEF CON like we're on the limelight. I don't know. If they get breached, it's going to be one of those, like, those shit storms that comes down where everybody's going to be looking at this and going, "Well, we could have told you." And do they admit they're wrong, or do they continue down the target path and just say that they did nothing wrong?
I look at it more like a when they get breached.
Hmm.
Because I mean, everybody's gonna get breached eventually. It's a matter of mitigating the damage that can be done by a breach, right? That's what we try to do. When they get breached, for legal purposes, this is not a threat. This is just a hypothetical. Is that fallout going to be? Is that going to happen before or after other people have gone to this same model? To your point, right? Like, people are going to see that this works in 2-5 years. They're going to do the same thing. Other companies are going to start laying off their security teams, moving to third-party security systems. Is the Patreon breach going to happen before or after that? And if it's after that, what's the fallout going to be for some of those third-party corporations or companies that are providing that service? I think it's going to be bad.
I think part of what confuses me is that it's so counter what the trends are. I mean, cybercrime is increasing every year. Like, we haven't seen a year where it's decreased. So you're saying essentially where all of these other organizations are just in the early stages of starting to invest in their cyber programs, you're saying we're going to go the opposite route because we don't see it as a threat. I, I can't follow that logic. I mean, it's not like we're even seeing stagnating cybercrime. We're just seeing increasing every year. So you're taking a massive gamble, which I can't see paying off for these guys.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to look up the number because I wrote an article about this a while back on, like, cybercrime as a market, as an industry, is it's been just like in a hyper growth kind of situation over the last 10 years, right? To where, like, every year they're growing like 60% year over
Yeah.
year, right? Especially with, like, the businessification, as I like to call it, of the cybercrime market, where it's no longer threat actors working as a single entity; they're working together to just make more money. Um, so in 2021, global damages were expected to be around 16.4 billion US dollars a day, um, and
Say
which
it.
equated to about 6.9 trillion US dollars for the year. That's
Yeah.
just damages, right? And the
That big number.
expectation of going into uh, what we've been looking at, right? Like, just cybercrime alone in 2015 was 325 million. In 2021, it was making 20 billion. So 6 years, and they went from 325 to 20 billion. Like, God, if I could have that as a company, I'd be pretty happy.
Right? How
Um,
do I invest in cybercrime?
hey, I'd like to invest in the Conti Group. Um,
Let's do a different podcast
Let's-
where we talk about how to get involved in cybercrime.
Hey, I'm trying to buy calls on cybercrime.
yeah, right.
Y'all do stock options? Um,
Can I get some equity in this?
yeah, like I think there's gonna come a time when we start looking at cybercrime not as like a bunch of kids in a basement doing bad guy stuff, but we're going to actually accept that it is a business and that they are hostile businesses. They're not just competition, Coke, Pepsi, whatever. They're hostile companies, and their business model is built around taking things directly from you. And the sooner we can wrap our head around the fact that these operate like companies, they operate like a business, they operate not like a bunch of 15-year-olds in a basement in Germany. They're businesses. And the sooner you start taking them seriously, the sooner you can actually start taking defensive measures against them. Because right now, people are like, a bunch of hacker kids. No, these guys are developing their own exploits. They're developing their own implants. These are long term projects with longer term effects. And we as a company culture type thing don't treat them that way. We treat them like, oh, oops, we got hacked by the Swedes, and we move on with our day. Instead of, hey, we need to defend against this threat. It's a persistent threat.
yeah,
And you hit on something that I think people forget about all the time is that to your point, they're long term efforts, and they're not just long term
Oh
efforts
yeah.
with a small group of people. You have subject matter experts in one specific thing, but they're going to lend their expertise that maybe nobody else has, and they're going to be developing exploits that there's just nothing out there for. All these 0 days are going to be from somebody that knows their one thing very well and they're experts in it. But when you get a collection of those people, that is incredibly dangerous. And we talked a bit offline about this concept, but at what point is the culture of organizations going to stop seeing cybersecurity as an expense, just a line item, just we have to do this to get our security or our insurance for this year, our cyber insurance, or we have to do this just to be compliant, just to work with
It's a
this
box to
company.
be checked. A
Yes,
lot of the clients that
exactly,
I work are boxes to be checked, right? We have to do this
exactly.
before we can deploy the product.
Yeah,
Um,
and at what
and I'm
point?
glad those boxes are there and they're mandated. However, the attitude of I got to check the box is kind of a problem.
yeah. Um, I mean, it definitely. I mean, that's something that we talk about as a company on my side a lot, right? Where it's like we're not trying to provide just the commodity pen test in the sense of like, hey, dudes, let's just check the box kind of thing. Like, the companies really have to start looking at their cybersecurity as like, there's a maturity to this, right? You don't get to just come out the gate and think that you can do a red team. I guarantee you, like, the three of us could probably break into 90% of the Fortune 100 companies, um, if there was no scope, right? Like the big thing with the limiting factor is like there's a lot of scope. Like, hey, we have this
Scope is
unlocked
another
door,
one
but
that
you
we
can't
could
use it.
we could talk about. Yeah, scope is another one we need to put a pin in and come back to for a full hour long talk because I think all of us would lose our minds for 2 hours if we were just allowed to scream about scope for a while. It's horrible.
Yep.
Like, don't lock me out of stuff because an APT or a real threat actor does not have a scope. They don't care
Nope.
that they're going to shut down one of your backup servers accidentally. I don't care. That's collateral damage to
The
them.
time to
It's
test your
not.
DR plan, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You're getting where it's even more value add. We're helping you enable
Yeah,
your
you're
business
welcome.
readiness. Yep.
Where's the backup server? It's also been ransomware.
You're getting a pen test and a free business continuity test.
You, we joke about that, but I saw someone's tweet that I retweeted. I thought it was the funniest thing ever. It was like, "Hey, if we pay the ransom, can we at least get the asset list you created of our network?" Like,
So that
how brilliant, right? Like, at least turn a net negative into a net positive. Now you have an asset list. But no,
Hey, look at all my IPs.
yeah, it definitely does come down to like the reprioritization of cybersecurity, right? Like, as we enter this soon-to-be recession, um, or expected to enter a recession, like, what's the first thing that gets cut at companies? Usually the IT budget. And if the IT budget's getting hit, it's gonna hit the cybersecurity budget because Typically, that's what 10% of an IT budget is cybersecurity. So cutting back is only going to make things so much juicier for threat actors, and like where it looks like it's going right now with how cybercrime is growing, and it's not slowing down by any means. It looks like it's going to get even worse and amplified by running into the recession, right? Like, oh, now we're gonna follow suit with Patreon. I keep wanting to say Peloton, which is the wrong company. The bikes are still not secure, but we won't get into that. Even with the way that Patreon's working, like there's going to be other companies that follow suit in a similar fashion. Maybe hopefully not as public, but yeah, I mean it's a shit show waiting to happen in my opinion.
I like to equate it to, if you need to cut costs, are you going to stop hiring security guards for your building?
They did in COVID.
Fair, but to me that's the same decision, right? Arguably, it's a worse mistake to make, right?
Yeah.
You want security guards on your building. You know, these companies that have their own building, I don't know. I don't even know if I can name companies without getting yelled at.
No, probably not.
Banks,
No.
you know, your generic bank A, your generic software company B. These guys own a building. They have security on the building. They own a network infrastructure. They don't have a security team for network infrastructure. They've offloaded it or downsized it or whatever. It's the same thing to me. But I don't have to physically go to your building. I work on this couch. I don't even have to leave my couch. I don't have to leave my basement to do what I want to do. I don't have to fly to California. I just sit here. The risk profile is a lot higher.
Yeah, I mean, what the Lapsus group is probably hacking their victims from their high school lab. Like there's
from the
Can you
computer
imagine,
lab.
like,
Yep.
what a revenue generating function of the company security would be if you could take all of the potential costs that security has protected the organization from. Like, if you had that mindset of this is actually what could have happened if we didn't have these security controls, security would be one of the highest revenue generating functions of the whole
Earners,
company.
Yeah,
for sure.
definitely
Yeah.
something that I think would help change the conversation.
Mhm.
Right? I think a big portion of it is we as cyber dudes and nerds and nerdettes, like we suck at communication. IT in general, like what was the phrase in the military? It was like communicators are the worst at communicating, right? Like
100%.
yeah, we just don't know how to talk to people.
We don't word good.
Yeah, I did this. Yeah, like we
Well,
don't
and
showcase
a
what
lot
we're
of that
doing.
just comes from language differences, right? It is a language to know what the hell I'm talking about. My wife has no clue what I'm talking about. Um, I remember one of my evals when I was active duty. I got passed over for promotion because I wrote a tool that patched thousands of vulnerabilities on the network. I put in all that work. I did all the stuff. I made the tool. I wrote everything. I coded everything. I built an infrastructure for it. Billy Boy next to me double clicked my executable, and he wrote
got the
his
promo.
eval at the exact same time that said he patched all these vulnerabilities. And the language difference between the two was what killed me, because mine was written very technically and it went to a board of individuals that are not very technical. And Billy Boy next to me wrote his very layman. And so when it went up to the board, they read his and understood it, whereas they had no idea what I was talking about. End of the day, I put 3-4 weeks of work in, and he double clicked it, and they read his and were like, "Yeah, cool." So there's a language barrier issue there too that we have a hard time overcoming. When I'm talking to you guys about stuff that we're working on or we're doing, I can use that technical jargon and I can make sense. But when we're talking to a board of directors, short of the CIO, who may or may not speak that language, ain't nobody gonna know what you're talking about. When you're like, "Hey, I compromised the AD," they're gonna go, "Oh, okay, next." That doesn't make sense to them. The CFO has no idea what compromise the AD means.
It's an art. It's an art to translate that into ways that the business can understand. And I use that term loosely, the business. Anybody that's not within our field, I'd say, being able to translate that into something that not only makes sense, but that they can make relevant to their lives. Because I think about earlier in my career when I would try to explain something. Like I remember one time I wrote a script for a PowerShell script to correlate. We were implementing a new IAM tool, and I was correlating the employee ID to all of the elevated users. So that whenever this an IAM tool would disable the user ID in the HR application, it would go through all of AD. It would get their Active Directory account plus any service account that was associated, any elevated. And I was so thrilled with that work because prior to that, they had no way to do that. They were going to have to manually disable every elevated account. And took this, I explained it to some of the people on my team who were thrilled about it. But when I started talking to some of the higher ups that are not in the idea of what we do, couldn't care any less. They didn't didn't know what I was talking about and thought it was a waste of my time and I should have just been doing my job.
Yeah. Do your
And
job.
that's the same language barrier issue. If you'd
Yep.
presented that, not to criticize, but just looking back on our prior lives, right? If you'd been able to present that in a manner where they understood what you were talking about,
Oh yeah.
they may have taken it more seriously. But compromised the AD, identified all of our service accounts. Whatever, dork.
And I
Go
mean
back to
that's
your nerd hole
So do you think
a
it would
good
be
and do
better
nerd
here
stuff.
then if like within our let's say a pen test report where we say, hey, like in the narrative of a pen test report, um, discussing what the fiscal responsibility of the company would be if this was a real breach? Do you think that would help translate, or do you think that it's more so the defensive side to look at this and go, hey, here's all the breaches we stopped and this is the cost of those breaches if those were successful, right? So one end of the spectrum showcases like us as red teamers having a little bit more responsibility in discussing this and being better with our discuss. Oh my god, what happened?
it got
That was
tight.
quick.
It got
The head got all sweaty.
that was a really
Uh,
like good shave, by the way.
was a quick shave job.
Yeah,
I think
nice.
kind of both. Like we try to there is no way, and that's part of the problem, to estimate the damage that I would have done financially to you because I don't know necessarily what's on those file servers. I know I got to them and I have control of them and I can run executables on them. Dope. I know that I would have done damage, but I don't know what the value of your intellectual property on those file servers might be. So there's no way for me to write in an executive summary like Elder would have caused $2.83 million worth of damage had we run a different executable. I can't get that number. There's no way. Um, but I think in like an executive summary type section, we in my company we try to write them in such a way that it illustrates to the executives who are only going to read that summary, if any, the extent of the damage that could have been done. From our attack chain being a phishing email or a malicious internal actor or whatever, through in more general layman's terms type speak, how we would have gotten to this point, and theoretically the type of damage we could have or would have done if we were a more malicious actor. Um, Estimating the cost would be a really good thing for a security team to do internally after they get the report. Uh, we spent, X number of dollars on having a pen test done. Those pen testers were able to compromise these things, which would have cost us Y number of dollars. It was a good investment. That would be really good for your your security team or your CIO or whatever to go through and generate a secondary report based on that. But for us to be expected to do it is borderline impossible.
I think that's a solid way to approach it too. I mean, from the internal perspective, if you were to look, I just saw that the average cost of a breach is about $161 per record right now, as of 2021 at least. So if you can apply that to this is how many records this file server had access to, and during a pen test, this is what they were able to compromise. very easy way to quantify how much you just saved the company for however many $1,000 investment in your pen test. Easy way to justify more.
I mean, you could definitely amplify that too, that number by price per computer in a ransomware incident, right? If you have domain admin, it's only a matter of time before you. I mean, you have domain admin, you can
Yep.
execute whatever you want, right? Wherever you want, and even if you're using like a best in class product to EDR, XOR, or whatever acronym we're going with today and tomorrow. Um, oh, hi Windows. Thanks for joining the podcast. So even whatever your totally
So
distracted.
confused.
ADHD, yeah, ADHD just took control. Oh man, he was like, "Oh shoot,
Get out of here, Windows.
yeah,
Uh,
Windows." There goes the editor. But no,
Get
so
out
like
of here, editor.
having that like he's gonna hate us. Having
we'll just chop it out.
that number, yeah, yeah, we could chop a lot of stuff out, honestly. Anyways, yeah, price per like execution, right? I think that would be good. Especially if you're like your pen test is like under the price tag of what it would have cost them if that was a realistic breach. Yeah, that's a good idea. Um,
Yeah.
though
Well,
speaking of
and then you have
breaches,
to add in things like brand reputation damage, right? That
mm,
is huge. It's one thing to lose your files, it's another to lose 20% of your customers
I don't know how
because
far.
everybody's like, "Oh, Patreon's gonna get breached. I'm gonna pull my credit card off of there." Uh, that's huge. It's 20% of your business is just gone. So factoring that kind of stuff in is also very difficult.
Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of breaches, and to keep us moving along, we got to talk about the possum in the room, um, which is Uber. Yeah, possum, not the elephant. Possums are a lot more terrifying than an elephant in the room. If you see an elephant in the room, you're gonna be like, dude, what the hell is the elephant doing here? If you see a possum, you're gonna be like, bro, excuse me? How he don't bite? And the next thing you know, you're ended up in the hospital with rabies. No,
Getting 18-inch needles in your belly.
oh man, no thanks. I'll take the pre-shot any day, but the other stuff, yeah. Anyways, as reported as of today, it being Friday the 16th of September, Uber has been breached.
The interesting thing about that is I was reading about this, and the article said that this happened as the CIO or the former CIO was on trial for a breach that occurred in 2016.
Really?
Yeah.
Ruh-roh.
Oh, interesting, right? I think it was former CIO. I could be wrong about that, but they're either current or former CIO is on trial right now and, for a breach that had occurred, and then this comes out, which I just found so interesting.
I
The
really
other
So
like.
being totally naive to the story there, what is he on trial for?
I should have read more of
Like
that article.
criminal negligence?
Let's see if I can pull something up real quick and speak more intelligently about this. Um,
Because like mismanaging a business is not illegal.
No,
so
but we are getting better at this.
CNBC says news of the attack comes as Uber's former security chief stands trial over a 2016 breach in which the records of 57 million users and drivers were stolen.
They probably never reported it, to be honest,
That
No.
would be a
because
problem, yeah.
Yeah,
according to the FBI's own statistics, like what is it, like 2/3 of breaches are never reported to authorities, even
which
when records are like disclosed. Like eh, there's just a possibility of just having your credit card completely stolen because a company is like, oh my god, we're gonna lose business from it. Don't tell nobody. And then you
Brand
know,
reputation.
yeah. I mean, I think that we really do need some legal change in the United States. And we're taking steps, but like we're
sure.
nowhere near like what Europe is at, right?
Hey, ADDPA is on its way.
God, I hope so.
It'll be a couple. I mean, it's still pretty early. I know it's going through Congress right now, and I'm sure there's going to be revisions, but it'll be something. I haven't read it in its entirety. What I've read about is that it's trying to align to GDPR. I highly doubt it's going to get to that standard. The other side of that, though, is that if there are controls that are less stringent than state level is still going to take precedent, which I think is pretty solid practice.
Yeah, make things more strict, not less. I would
Yeah,
agree to
exactly.
that. I don't know. This particular hack doesn't seem like it's too major overall. I mean, from what it sounds like is the person who's claiming to be the hacker um, is just an 18-year-old kid who hacked Slack and has replaced the website with a pornographic image and the words "fuck you, wankers," um, which that does scream 18 years old, right? Like not going after money, not going after credit cards. He's just like, let me flip you the bird, man, and running away, right? It sounds like the best way to put it. It sounds like an early 2000s hack, right? Like back in the day before hackers were like really looking to like steal money or make it as a business. They were just over here to as like generating clout. Like, oh yeah, I hacked Microsoft and defaced their website. You right? Like that's the way it reads to me. But that's that's pretty funny. Yeah. So let me read here. Um, the 18-year-old hacker says that he was able to hack them because they had in quote weak security, and claimed that he got in through social engineering. So
What I
you know,
loved when I read about this too was that one of the articles says he infiltrated Slack on there that Uber was using, and they said through a technique known as social engineering. Like it just we were talking a bit earlier. Like it speaks to the ignorance of those that don't know this field and those that don't know basic cyber hygiene. That this term has to be explained. What is social engineering? And if I talk to anybody in this field, I can throw that out and I don't have to explain it. I don't have to say this is what you should expect with it. Even people though my age that are friends that are in entirely different industries, they have an idea of what social engineering is. So it gets me thinking, like, who's the target audience of this article that you have to go in depth to explain what social engineering is?
Like explaining what a stoplight is. Like, you know what that is.
Yeah.
It's ubiquitous. Like, it's a stoplight. It's a stop sign. You know what it is. You know what it does. You know what you're supposed to do.
Yep.
Explaining what social engineering means would feel the same way to me. If you're like, okay, so at a stoplight, you have to like look at it and see if it's red. I'd be like, shut the fuck up. Like,
Sometimes people might pretend to be other people and take your stuff.
right. It,
yeah. But I mean, think about
explaining it
how
at that
many.
low of a level is borderline insulting to a lot of people. Like,
Yeah.
it's one of those terms that I would expect most people know. Like I said earlier, my wife doesn't know what I'm talking about, but she knows what social engineering is.
Yeah. My wife's a teacher and she knows what social engineering is,
That's
even if
because
she
she's
doesn't know
social
anything else I'm
engineering.
talking about.
She's social engineering those kids into learning. Does it
Yeah,
every
getting all
day.
their credit cards.
Yeah. Give me your dad's $20. Going on a field trip.
Well,
Your
I
credit
need you to
card, kid.
I need you to submit your homework and $20 in Roblox gift cards.
I need those V-Bucks on Fortnite. If everyone can please send in them credit cards that you use for your own V-Bucks. Yeah, no, I think what's equally insulting more so than people not knowing what social engineering is just a general kind of term, is more so the training that a lot of internal teams tend to do around phishing. Um, honestly, like the amount of times I see like internal phishing programs and they go, "Oh, here's our internal fish. As you can see, there's a misspelled word here, right? Or there's multiple misspelled words. When's the last time you saw a legit spear phishing email or a phishing campaign against a company have like a legit misspelled word? Like,
Oh, a couple weeks ago, we got them.
oh, you got like a legit fish against you that was like
Oh,
misspelled.
100%.
All
Yeah.
right, so maybe it's
Yeah.
justified in catching that. Like, but like to me, like the
It wasn't the
APTs that I
misspellings
see.
that catch things, though. It's not, it was misspelled, "Ooh, that's a problem." It was pretty evident that, like, "Click this link," or what's the other one that one of our guys got that is personal? It was like, oh, no, it wasn't personal, it was to the business. It was like, "Hey, you're overdue for this bill. Click here and view this PDF."
Oh, I like that one. That one's actually a really good one.
Yeah, and
That's a
it
fun one.
presumably it looked legitimate, but like, no, we're not.
Yeah, but think about like the phishing training that you know companies, some internal teams do send out, and it's like it's almost built to the sense of like this is quite obviously a phishing training. Let me go ahead
Mhm.
and report it, right? Whereas like the phishing campaigns, and apparently I'm by the way I'm heading into a cave, so I just realized my video got super dark. No, you know the campaigns that we run, like that my team goes out and does, they're pretty legit. Like this is how APTs send out good phishing emails, right? They're researched quite well into what that company looks like, what their email headers look like, how do they sign their stuff, right? Are they outsourcing IT or HR services? If they are, can they abuse that kind of stuff, right? Whereas like a lot of times the phishing campaign is click here, we have this super sweet Starbucks gift card, right? And
Those are the
Starbucks is like
internal ones.
misspelled, and like the logo isn't even the actual logo. It's like something that like a 4-year-old drew, and you're like, oh, this is phishing. Cool. And then you hit the report fish, and then you get the email that says, congratulations, you caught our fish. Like, yeah, no shit. That was easy.
Some of
Yeah,
these ones are
we
like
did a
90s,
campaign.
like
Yeah, some of
Nigerian
them look
prince
terrible.
level.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
we did a campaign. When was it? Like 2013, 2014. So this is going to be a little bit military acronymism, but MWR is Morale, Welfare, and Recreation. It's an organization that you can go to like, I want to borrow a dodgeball or a basketball and go play at the gym or whatever. They have canoes and toys and bounce castles and stuff. Um, Cheap travel sometimes. So we set up a phishing campaign at one point when we were overseas that was like, hey, we're doing a raffle for one family up to 5 people back to mainland US. We'll take you home for Christmas. We'll bring you back. We could have done a real shoddy job on that, and we claimed it was from MWR. But I went way out of my way to build a whole extra website that looked like theirs, that had their actual phone numbers, their email addresses on it. It looked legitimate. So if you wanted to go scroll through, it linked back into their stuff. So if you clicked on my page and then you were like MWR home, it would actually take you to the real page. And we had thousands of hits on a base that had, sub 10,000 people. We had thousands and thousands of hits, but it was
But
because
all
we
the
took the
stuff.
time and we put it on the Facebook page for the base, and we were like, "Hey, look at this thing." I got so many angry phone calls from MWR about that, but since we took the time to craft it up and make it nice and distribute it really well, we sent like half the base to their their information assurance training again. We had to shut down the base theater for like 10 days and send half the base back to their IA training to redo it. And the IA training that they redid was crappy phishing emails like that.
It's also a
So like,
game that's just miserable to work through. I don't wish that like hell upon anybody.
yeah,
So I
the
would be equally as angry at
oh yeah, the little JavaScript game where like Maria hands you a blank CD and
you.
says there's games on this, and you're like, God,
Yeah.
what are you doing?
A random gentleman comes up to you at the coffee shop and gives you a USB drive and says that this is for your boss. What do? Do you A,
And then
plug it
and then
into your
steals your
computer?
phone. I remember
Yeah.
he steals your phone.
Yeah, he steals your phone and then it says, what do you do? Chase after him or just report it? And you're like, I want to chase
I
after
tackled
him.
that fool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Who
failed that
doesn't?
thing so many times. I
Oh my
failed
god.
that test so many times. That and the SEER 100. It's like all online, same thing. I failed that over and over again because they're like, "You can't do that." I'm like, "I'm going home. I'm doing it." Like, failed
Yeah.
it.
See ya, man. I've learned a lesson here today, guys. The first one is close your blinds before you do a video. Um, this is my
Second is do a sound check.
the second one, do sound check. The third one is I don't know. I don't really have any. Oh, jeez.
Stop playing with your ring
Now I'm
light.
trying. I'm trying to just like it keeps going auto on, auto off, and you're like, what do you mean auto off? And so it's like it's trying to kill its exposure, so it's not so like massive. But Yeah, the light is massive. No, this week has been just an entertaining week for breaches. Or the last 2 weeks have been an entertaining week for many breaches. Not only Uber, but TikTok was claimed to be breached as well. What else was there? Um,
There's a new Log4j.
there is a
No, I
new
made
log.
that up.
No,
No,
there is a new equivalent to Log4j, which
is
is
there?
Teams. Passes
Oh yeah.
everything in clear text.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
not
Yep.
only
fair enough.
has our own Mr. Bobby Raunch um, discovered the gift shell, manipulating gifts to be a C2, but somebody else was like, oh hey, you could get clear text credentials through Teams, right? Um, so they're not having a good week, I should say. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, they're having some problems, but I think that's a good point to kind of wrap us up. Maybe we go around the horn like we did last time and say one last thing. Yeah. All
Sure.
right. Well, my last thing,
Um,
yeehaw, don't get hacked. Sucks to suck. Rangers lead the way. Uh,
Mine. I can wrap up with party hard. Don't do drugs. I'm not your dad.
there it is. Somebody needed to say it.
I'm not your dad. I thought we were actually going to have a closing statement, so I didn't come up with any dumb bullshit to say. Treat your security team like they're important because they are.
No, that's I think pretty relevant. But yeah, we're the cyber idiots, and we still don't know how to close or open our podcast. So we'll just kill it here. Bye.
Bye.